Are you looking for a used car and you're having trouble trying to pick one? Well, then you might need a VW Tiguan. All right, bad jokes aside, we really do have a 2017 VW Tiguan beside me today. This is kind of an entry-level German small SUV, and I think in a lot of ways it could be a good fit for a lot of different people. But we need to talk about reliability here today. Well, this car is just right around 100,000 miles. We want to find out if we buy a higher mileage one of these, if it'll make it to 250 or 300,000 miles without major issues. We're going to take a walk around the outside. We're going to talk about the common problems, and then we're going to decide if the Tiguan is a buy or a bust. Starting up front for our walk around on the Tiguan. This is actually my first real experience with a VW SUV. I have not reviewed one. I've reviewed a couple Audis, which obviously share a lot of platforms. And the Audis always drove better than I anticipated, but they did have some reliability issues under the hood. Now, as far as cosmetic wear on the outside of these cars, I really don't have much to talk to you about, other than the black plastic I noticed is fading, as you would expect, and one of the vinyl cladding pieces is coming loose. So that might be something you want to look out for if you're looking at a used one. And then styling wise, as we move up to the front, I actually think that VW did a pretty good job. They're very, very basic, sort of simple looking, but I think it's one of those less is more situations. And there's not much you can do with a really small SUV like this, but I think they did a pretty decent job on them. Under the hood of our Tiguan here, we got a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo engine that makes 200 horsepower and 207 pound-feet of torque. Now, I'm going to start you right off the bat with the biggest problems on this engine, and it really is a major, major concern. This is a timing chain engine, which I personally usually prefer over a timing belt. However, these ones have some big problems. Timing chain stretch is a problem, as well as the timing chain tensioners going bad. Oil changes frequently can help out with this situation, but really it is a design flaw and a parts flaw in these engines, because the failure rates usually end up right around 60, 70,000 miles, where the chains will start to rattle and those tensioners or chain have to be replaced. If you don't replace them and it jumps time, it will basically destroy your engine, so you want to avoid that. And the actual repair to the timing chain components is in the thousands, like $2,000 to $3,000 to have a shop redo the timing setup on these engines. So it is a real and major concern for these vehicles. If you're looking at a used one of these, verify when the car starts up, the engine is cold, that there's no rattling coming from the side of the engine. If you hear like a chain-like sound, the timing chain is absolutely going bad and has some extra play in it that it should not have. So you got to really listen to these engines when they first start up and they're cold. Now, one of the other causes for the timing chain issues is oil consumption. These engines are known to use a fair amount of oil as they age. Even around 50 to 100,000 miles, you'll really start to notice it. Excess oil consumption, big problem. Now, obviously, it would be great if you could just keep adding oil and you would never have an issue the rest of the time, but the timing chain problems definitely occur because these get run low on oil. Other issues that you can run into is if you notice that you're leaking a little bit of coolant. You want to pay attention to that, make sure the car's not overheating. But if you look around the water pump and the thermostat housing and you notice any sort of pink color, that's the color of antifreeze that these use, that means that those are starting to seep and leak a little bit of coolant. Very common issue on these engines, so don't overheat your engine and cause yourself more problems. Make sure your coolant's topped off. Now, I did say this is a turbocharged engine, and on any turbocharged engine, for the most part, you're gonna have potential issues with the turbos and turbo components. These are very prevalent on these cars. The turbo itself, the wastegate, you'll end up with check engine lights for underboost codes. There'll be a rattling from the wastegate coming from the engine. Lack of power, just basically anything to do with the turbo system can fail, and they usually do prematurely on these cars. Now, if you notice your car is running a little rough, Intake gaskets are known to fail on these as well. That could also cause a check engine light. So if you have a check engine on one of these cars, definitely run the codes, because it could be a variety of things, and some would be very expensive, some really wouldn't be that expensive. Intake gaskets are actually not one of the things that really scare me too much. They're not that expensive to replace. Now, another thing that is very common on direct injection engines like this one is carbon buildup. Your engine gets dirty over time. The fuel doesn't get into the passageways with a direct injection engine to clean them up. And you actually have to take the engine somewhat apart in different places to clean up all the ports. Very common on these cars. Again, if you notice running rough, lack of power, could be carbon buildup inside the engine. Now, the last thing I want to mention is actually back sort of to the oil consumption issues, and that is the PCV valve. When those fail, you'll have some excess oil consumption as well, and you'll have some maybe running rough, maybe some smoking, different things like that. And the PCV valve is really not that difficult to replace, so you can easily take care of that, but it is a common failure point. Now, this engine is mated to a 6-speed automatic transmission, and this is where we actually have some good things, and that is transmissions are pretty darn reliable in these. Yeah, you can service them, but really they don't have a lot of issues. Nothing super common for me to talk to you about. Just take it on a test drive, make sure it shifts through all the gears good, and transmission wise, you should be good to go. Now, this car is an all-wheel drive, and this is a Haldex all-wheel drive system, which really doesn't mean anything other than it is slightly more complicated, and maintenance is key on them, especially in the rear differential and things. Change that fluid. It has to be done with a fairly expensive fluid that is very specific to these cars. So check that out and change that fluid regularly, but otherwise you should be good to go. Moving on to the interior here of the VW Tiguan. And right off the bat, I think these actually look pretty nice. I think VW uses pretty nice materials, better than other like entry-level small SUVs like this. Because remember, this isn't a luxury brand, it's VW, it's not Audi, Mercedes, BMW, anything like that. It's just a, you know, Chevy, Toyota, Honda comparison here. And it's better than most of those other brands. And I think that's a really good bright spot on these cars. Few wear and tear items that I noticed really was just that the vents for the AC or your heat that are in your dash, they like to crack and break. There's several of them here that are broken, and you're gonna find that on most of these cars. As far as other wear and tear, the seats actually hold up incredibly well. Steering wheel still looks nice, door panels, all that stuff. VW has had some issues with glue for their headliners and door panels and things like that fail in the past. I haven't seen it so much on these cars, but definitely could be something that pops up. Now let's talk about electronics. There's a lot of electrical issues on these cars. I'll start with the simplest of stuff, and that is things like door sensors not reading that your door is closed, window switches going bad, window motors failing and your windows getting stuck. Some of this stuff is common on any car, but it's like it is more common on these for sure. But let's move to the biggest issue, which is actually the clock spring. Now, it's not actually a clock at all if you're not familiar with it. It's a piece inside of your steering column here. You have to take the airbag off, you have to take the steering wheel off to get in there and replace it. But these will just fail, and they will cause your steering wheel controls not to work. It'll also bring up things like an airbag light, just different problems for you, and make it look like your car is like dying. It's not the most expensive thing in the world to replace, but it is pretty common on these cars. Beyond the clock spring, I have one thing that I just want to mention that I noticed, and that is that the AC is just not very good. It is working properly as intended. The air is very cold, things like that, but it doesn't blow super hard, and you pretty much have to keep it on high to really feel any air conditioning at all. So VW could have done better there. Now, as far as the actual sitting in here, driving experience, daily driver, I actually kind of like them. I think it's pretty comfortable, pretty nice interior, and feels more like a luxury car than most entry-level cars. Moving on to the rear seat area here of the Tiguan. And actually the seat, while being extremely hard, is actually pretty comfortable. It sits up nice and high. I still have plenty of headroom. I got decent leg room. It's not great. I'm 5'9" for reference. The seat material, all of the wear and tear stuff looks almost brand new back here. I'm actually really impressed with that. As far as other things that I noticed, and one of the first ones is I always check to see if they put the same material on the door panels as they did up front, and they did not here. They cheaped out. This is just hard plastic. There is some soft stuff here, but they definitely cheaped out on the door panels, not quite as luxurious back here. There's a 12 volt outlet and some air vents. Otherwise, pretty basic, but fairly comfortable. An adult can sit back here with no problem. Moving on to the trunk area here, and it's small, but not terrible. I really don't have any complaints. You can see that the rear seat does have cup holders that flip down in the center there, and you can see that the plastic for it is actually pretty faded from the sun back there. So that's got a little wear and tear that I didn't really notice till I got back here, but decent space. There is a real spare tire in underneath of this, and there is some storage down there as well. Pulling out onto the road now in our Tiguan. And like I said, I'm fairly excited because I've never driven one of these before. This is the first time. And I do have a clear stretch of road, so we are gonna get on it here and feel all that horsepower. It was okay. It was okay till it shifted. Then it kind of pittered out a little bit there. Yeah, power is actually a little bit better than I thought, but certainly not fast by any stretch. Transmission shifted great, so no issues there. Now we do need to talk about fuel economy, because you might be thinking small turbo, 4-cylinder, small car, this thing probably gets great fuel economy, and you would be thinking incorrectly. This is rated at 20 and 24 out on the highway, which is not great numbers. It's not like the worst I've ever seen for this class of car, but it's definitely not class leading. And the big thing is that VW wants you to put premium fuel in. So that is tough. That is a big price jump. You're going to be at the fuel pump a lot for driving a smaller car like this. As I'm just cruising around here, I'm going around a pretty decent little corner here at 55 miles an hour. And I got to tell you, as far as actual driving experience, it's great. It definitely drives like a sort of a German car. And I do mean that positively. Some people might not, but I actually really do like the way that most German cars drive. And this one feels very similar to most of the ones I've driven, and I like that. As far as suspension issues, things like that, they're actually pretty decent. I can't complain about anything. Of course, at 150,000 miles, you're probably going to have some suspension, clunks or things here or there, but nothing overly common, nothing premature wear, anything like that. As we're pulling back out here, we just had to turn around, and I'm just gonna let it try to shift up through the gears as you would on a normal acceleration, and just feel sort of the power there. It feels decent. It feels decent. It felt a little slower maybe there than I would want, but that's to be expected with the power that this car has. I think that really the positive on this thing is the driving experience. And just interior comfort, things like that, I think are pretty decent. But the fuel economy is really a killer, even beyond like some of the reliability issues that we talked about, because I think that eliminates a lot of the people who would be interested in this car, because I feel like most of the buyers would be wanting a vehicle that gets a little bit better fuel economy than what this does. Back from the test drive, and now it is time to decide if the Tiguan is a buy or a bust. I do think these cars offer a lot that I think people would like. I think they have a better interior and a little bit better driving experience than a lot of other sort of entry-level auto manufacturers like, Toyota, Honda, Chevy. I think in a lot of ways, these do have some really nice features. But let's talk about value. These cars with 150,000 miles, which is what we always base these videos on, are right around $7,000. This one has less, so it would be a little bit more money. And I do think it's a pretty cool all-wheel drive SUV for that price. But let's talk about reliability, because these reviews' biggest concern is whether a car will make it to 250 or 300,000 miles without having major issues. And when we were under the hood, we went over quite a few different things. The three main concerns I have are timing chain, excess wear, very common at fairly early mileage on these, and that will essentially destroy your engine. The others are oil consumption, which is extremely common, and then turbo and turbo components failing prematurely. That's a lot of different things to fail on these cars, and all of them are fairly expensive and in-depth if you actually want to fix them. So today, my decision is pretty easy. While they look all right and they have some really nice things about them, the Tiguan is a bust. I just could not recommend this car to anybody who's looking for something that will last up into the higher mileage. If you have one of these cars and have gotten a crazy amount of miles on it or haven't had a lot of issues, I want to hear about that. If there's something you think I missed, I want to hear about that too. Please put your experiences down below and I'll read them. I appreciate you guys following along. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.